Can you talk about Eventbrite in 10-second pitch?
Eventbrite is the world's largest self-service ticketing platform. We help people come together through live experiences. So we have a whole range of events organized on our platforms, from a yoga class to your startup classes to big music festivals and sporting events, pretty much around the world at this point.
So you joined the team at the very beginning as a co-founder. Can you talk about this very beginning of the adventure?
Yeah, it's one of these moments in life that you don't predict. A friend of mine who was working with Kevin, my co-founder, at his previous company, introduced me to Kevin when he left his previous company, and had the idea for Eventbrite of creating a platform online where people, like organizers or regular people as well, could come and organize events easily. And we talked, and he was looking for someone technical to help him build the platform, and that's how we started. Kevin decided to go into business with his wife, which is pretty rare. So it was him, his wife, and myself at the beginning.
So everybody is looking for a technical co-founder. How did they convince you to join this startup?
I think for me it was pretty clear that the market was very well not catered for. There were solutions for very large events. There were the Evites at the time for personal events, but in between there was a huge gap and no one was addressing it. So for me it was very exciting to think about building a product that potentially millions of people could use and that would help create real connections in real life, because I think we were seeing already the trend of people's lives moving online, chatting on Facebook at the time or Twitter, and the need for physical connections, I think, was going to get bigger and bigger as we became more and more absorbed on our online life.
So you were convinced by the concept, the idea, but I guess also by the people, right?
Yeah, of course. I think but it was a gamble. I mean, we didn't know each other. We were not high school friends who had been together for a long time. So we had to make a quick decision whether that's something we wanted to do together. And I think we took it very carefully. Like, we started working together in a very informal fashion. We were not co-founders at the time. We were just people working on a project. So there was no expectations that we were maybe going to stay forever together. I think it just turned out that we had very complementary profiles. I was technical, but they were more on the business side, the finance side, thinking about marketing, sales, customer service, all the things that I'm not an expert in. So I really felt that we had some elements to make it possible for us to work together, and it proved pretty accurate over time.
How were you tracking your growth? I mean, what KPI was the most important? The number of tickets sold, the turnover?
The KPIs have remained the same 10 years later. So we use mostly gross ticket sales, how much money is being transacted on the platform, how many new users we're acquiring. In the first 10 years of our existence, we're very much focused on growth. So how do we acquire, bring more people on the platform? So those are the two key metrics we've been watching over the years.
Okay. And in the 6 first months, you remember the growth?
I don't.
No.
But there's so many numbers in our heads from 10 years of existence. I can't remember exactly, but it was quick. I mean, we had to scale up. We came from zero, so it's much easier to get big numbers.
Yeah, so you were based in the Bay Area. It's the tech people who used the product first. This was a choice, or it was because of the context?
It's easier to test things on your friends, so that's what a lot of startups do. They test their product with family and friends. I think that's the way we started. We knew a few people who organized events, but very quickly we went on to other types of organizers that we didn't know about, and that were not part of our community or not part of our friends list.
The product get better and better thanks to the users, because they were giving you some feedback and telling you what to change and how to change quick. So you were kind of attracted by the traction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For the first 2 years, I think we got every single email that came in through the systems from users either complaining about something or telling us we were doing a good job. And when we started in the tech community with our friends and extended family, I would call them, but very quickly we started having organizers from many other fields using the platform and many other areas as well in the US. And it was a great moment to feel the passion of these people for what they were doing and what they were expecting of us. So pretty much every day we had these active promoters, people who loved the platform and who wanted to use it more and more but couldn't because they were missing X or Y feature, telling us that. And that helped us tremendously, I think, in
your
creating
to-do
a
list?
roadmap and focusing on the right priorities. I think that's always the problem where you're a three-person companies. It's where you invest your time. And having this constant feedback from all the promoters of the brand and the platform telling us what they needed was really super helpful.
This is really important about the focus, is that what you're saying, your focus and your to-do list was given by the crowd, by the users.
I think it's a combination. You see the vision that you have, you articulate what it's going to take to get there, you put it on paper, and then you decide what the first steps are. You test those first steps with maybe beta testers, or you trust that they won't judge you if it doesn't go well, and then you expand that. But collecting feedback all the time, I think, helped us decide whether or not we were on the right track, whether or not the features that we were pushing were the ones they needed to do their job every day. And I think it's a feedback loop. You put something out there, you get feedback, and you iterate. I think that's the lean startup model that we applied without knowing that it was called lean startup.
The first moment you went to see a VC, when was it? And what did you have as good KPIs to show?
And we had small rounds before 2009, but at the end of 2009, that's when we decided we needed to take the company to the next level, have a lot more cash to hire a much bigger team. So our first real round was with Sequoia at the end of 2009. We had some pretty good metrics, but compared to where we are today, we're quite insignificant.
Yeah.
But what Sequoia did was to talk to a lot of our organizers, actually, to see what they were seeing in the platform, to understand why they were using us versus potentially other software out there. And they saw that these people were not necessarily super professional promoters, but they had a passion. They wanted to live from this passion, and they saw Eventbrite as a facilitator of an enabler of them realizing their dreams or living from their passion. So we had people that were photographers that could teach other people how to take pictures, or people working in banks but were excited about food, and all of a sudden they quit their job and opened a cooking school.
So they
we have a lot
understood
of these examples.
the trend of the sociological changing environment.
Yeah, I think the /society where people are something /something else.
Yeah.
And we saw live experiences as potentially one of the big things that people wanted to do with their lives. And by being self-service, by being reliable, by being open and catering to any type of events, we opened up perspective for a lot of people to live from their dreams.
So you had the vision, and you had the product working, and you had the community. You were not.
Good KPIs.
You had good KPIs.
VCs still look at
Exactly.
your KPIs, your growth. I think growth is really important when you go see a VC. If you don't have numbers, then they're banking on your ID for the future. But if you have actual examples of how the platform is performing, then it's much easier to.
So it means that you were not in need, actually, of this money when you raised one. To scale, you needed it, of course, to go to the next level. But the product was working.
The product was working. We just started monetizing the year before, so we didn't have so much revenue at the time. But the trends were good. We had a few months left of cash in the bank, so we were not totally starving and needing the cash, but it was a critical point. I think if we had not raised money then, I don't know what would have happened.
And I remember I met you in Paris in 2010, 11, and you were pushing on the launch in Europe, in France especially. You as a tech person.
As a European also.
Yeah, of course, as a French and European guy. But this is really interesting because you were handling this job, you were judging at pitch competitions and everywhere in the ecosystem, in the event. And this was something that you decided to do because you like to do it and you put aside a little bit the technical parts?
Well, I always thought our path to becoming a big, long-term, sustainable company was through internationalization. So I spearheaded our efforts to become international. Our code base was not ready at the time, so we had to do a lot of work to make it internationalizable. And in 2011, we launched in the UK first, and then pretty much everywhere in Europe very quickly after. And I think we wanted to replicate what made our success in the US. So starting with the tech community, that's why I got a lot more involved in the UK, in Germany, in France, with the tech community, being part of these judging startup competitions or tech events, just to promote the brand, to say that we were in Europe, that we had a great platform for Europe. And I felt it was almost my duty as the European on the team to be that frontal face that people associate with the brand in Europe. And I think it helped also not feel like it was the big American company coming and taking over the market from local competitors. I think we have some international DNA that we're proud of, and sharing the experience that I've had in the Valley, I think also helped me become a better person, better mentor, better advisor. And that I think that time investment that I put in at the beginning was really paid off, especially in the UK, where our growth after we started opening the office there was quite impressive for the first few years.
How do we grab the European market that doesn't exist because it's different countries, different cultures?
We're 5 years after we launched, and we only have a physical presence in the UK, Germany, and Ireland. So it's conquering Europe, I think, goes through one market at a time. You really focus your efforts. There's a lot of specificities in the markets. Germany has very different payment methods, for example. And we had to implement big changes in our infrastructure to be able to collect bank-to-bank transfers are very prevalent in Germany. So we had to integrate with a payment provider that enabled us to do these types of payments. Netherlands as well has they don't take credit cards, it's bank to bank. So it's the small details that make your platform either totally unusable or fit for the market. So you have to really study each market very carefully, understand specifics of the market, and especially the event market for us, which is very, very different for each country we're in. France, for example, is quite different from the German market.
Why? I mean, do we use it differently than the German one?
No, I think the history of ticket sales have been very focused on the offline sales. So with the Fnac, for example, with all their point of sales, there's still 50% of tickets being sold that way. So what happened in the French market is that the new players had to share with the other players a portion of the ticket sales. So now we have a field where you need to be integrated with all these different players if you want to be ticketing the next music festival. Because
but is it your
people
target?
Want to go in the city at the point of sale to buy their tickets still.
Yeah.
Which is very different from the US, where ticketing goes through the primary ticketer, and 99% of ticket sales go through one partner. That's it. The UK is very similar like that.
But if you target only the people like doing event and trying to become a professional, it's not your.
No, and we have a lot of events in France.
Yeah.
But they are not the big music festivals, for example,
and
that
you
we
have
get in the
big,
US or the UK.
Okay, you have big music festivals.
Oh yeah, we have
so,
quite a few now.
So can you tell us about this different users type that
And
you
we have all range of events, so from 5-person yoga class to, I think the biggest we've had was more than 100,000 people at music festival. So they have very different needs, and that's what we're slowly realizing, that having a horizontal platform that has the same functionality for everyone scales to a point, but after that you need to provide solutions, and that's the way we're heading. So thinking more in terms of what are the specific needs of music festival organizers, for example, and creating the product or enhancing the product with the features they need, so that in the end everyone can benefit, because we still want to make all the features that we have available to everyone. You might not use them as a smaller organizer. You don't have the complexities that a big music festival has. But I think we better the platform by targeting very specifically a segment of our user base.
What I'm wondering is that when you say you open a country, you send someone. You need to open an office there. But sometimes
not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
When
exactly.
we launched in 2011, for example, we only had the UK office.
Okay.
And they were dealing with all of Europe's operations. So we have customer service in different languages. And then depending on the growth of the market and our aspirations for these markets, we start hiring people that are more focused on marketing, growing the connections that we have with the event industry, business development, people on the ground. So that's what we have in Germany and Ireland at the moment.
Okay, but with such a technical product that is working, why do you need the person in the country, and what do they do? What are the expectations?
I think there's many things we need to think of. The brand positioning, what do people know us in those markets? It was much easier with the Anglophone countries, because we already benefited from all our SEO presence, all the content that we've generated for the US market. So the UK, Canada, Australia have been much easier to get mindshare from people, because they already knew the platform and they had all this content in English. But Germany was our first non-English country where we really focused on. And there we had to define what we are as a brand for Germany, which might be slightly different than the rest of the countries we present in, and then connect with the local ecosystem. So I did some myself when we launched, but after that you need those repeat connections. You need to find the large organizers who will need to be convinced that you're a trustworthy, robust, reliable platform, that you're offering everything they need. So that really usually takes some people on the ground to really explain the solution.
And there are some local competitors.
Yes, we have local competition everywhere.
Everywhere?
These days.
Okay. And so you need to convince the organizers to go through your platform rather than through the platform.
And we want to really be felt like a local offering, not a US company distant that doesn't care about them. So having people on the ground who are from the country, who speak the language, who really understand the mindset, in the event industry at least, is really critical, I think, for going farther from the small, medium-sized organizer that use the platform self-service. If you want to go into the higher, bigger, larger events or like music festivals, it's a very relationship-driven industry. People don't jump from one platform to the other. It's a big investment for them when they need to train their people, to change their processes, to integrate with a different solution. So there's a cost associated to that they need to justify, and we help them by having people they can talk to every day that understand their problems and understand where we're heading, so that they can make the connection.
Yeah. It's not only the B2C part, it's a B2 organizer part.
And we have a wide range of organizers, from individuals who do one thing one time once a year to big corporations that have their retreats 10 times a year, for example, to professional promoters of events. So it's very, very customer base.
So do you take any time now on the tech part? How do you
Oh,
organize your day?
I'm still very involved with the tech side. That's what I'm passionate about, is building the best product we can for...
How do you find the time?
I think lately I've done less of the public representation, for example. I go to fewer events. I go to selected events that we think we can gain something from. But I'm very focused on continuing the efforts we've done until now to build a very reliable platform. Organizers expect their money to be in their bank account at a certain time. So all these small things that make us feel like people can trust us are very important. And then we launched 10 years ago. Parts of our website are not up to what people expect today, and things are changing. How you share events through social networks or now through your mobile phone on Messenger, for example. Things that you need to adapt to, and I think keeping the vision in mind and changing the tech to adapt to whatever new technologies appear is very important.
How do you act with the new competition? Like I think of this Splash That platform, or this kind of new competitors that arouse.
And we looked at every
Everyone.
company in the ticketing industry, and the event industry in general, which is very large. So we have a big circle with all the companies that we can think of. And we watch what they do, not very closely. We still want to define our own path. So we observe the trends, we observe what new startups are emerging, how they do things, and then we adapt our product, not necessarily to the competition, but we take that into account when we build our roadmap and where we want to invest. So our long-term goal, I think, is to be the events marketplace where anybody can find any type of events. So how do we get there? And that's a work in progress, but we have steps to get there, and that's what we are really focused on, much more than what other player is coming and as successful as they might be. I think we think that we know what our future is going to look like, and that it's going to be a successful future if we manage to get there.
Renaud, what's your opinion on and experience about what we call toxicity in Europe, meaning that it's harder, it's heavier when you're an entrepreneur to be ambitious, to grab a big enough market, because it doesn't exist, this European market. What do you think about it? How can we actually overcome as entrepreneurs this first barrier in Europe?
I think it's changed a lot since I started Eventbrite.
Yeah.
2006, I think the Paris ecosystem was probably tiny, maybe, I don't know, 50 people knowing each other, and now it's this big, vibrant community with accelerators, incubators, seed funds, growth funds. So there's been a lot of changes, and you're in part responsible for evangelizing the startup ecosystem, the startup lifestyle, I would call it, that people really respond to. And I think the opportunities are great anywhere, and that's a big change from even 5 years ago, where you, as a French company, really had to capture the French market before you could go into other European markets, and maybe if you're successful, then you go to the US. That's, I think, totally obsolete now. People, even French entrepreneurs, they don't hesitate, if they have the right connections and the right mindset, to go straight to the Bay Area to start their company. And I'm investing in a few companies that have done that very early.
This is cool, but this is like one way to develop.
And maybe it's China, maybe it's the UK. Maybe
but I mean, like the tricky part is when a guy like BlaBlaCar or Capitaine Train will have to take country by country, in Europe, and create this market. So I'm not only, first I'm talking about the general mindset. You're right, it's changing. It's if you take it 5 years ago, it was crap. Now it's crazy to see how fast the culture.
It's maturing quickly.
Exactly. But what we felt at the Familia is that you need to be even stronger to be able to, and more radical, to be able to tackle the market. If you take the BlaBlaCar story, the guy had to keep on during 7 years before having any trust from the market, but also from the investors.
We see that in many industries where you need to really, maybe it was a little too early and the first few years didn't take off as fast as they would have expected because the market wasn't ready. I think the arrival of the Ubers of the world made the appeal of a service like BlaBlaCar much higher and much more easily communicated to consumers. So maybe they were just a bit too early, and then once the right timing came with probably mobile phone had a big impact on their business. It really took off. And sometimes even for us, like it took us a few years to get to a point where we're becoming a large company and thinking about the long term versus really being focused on the next 3 months. So I don't think it's necessarily just a European thing. I think we have more complexities expanding in Europe because of the different languages, different regulations, and hopefully there'll be laws that make these easier to integrate with and expand to outside of your home country. But I don't think the hurdles are necessarily there anymore. They're more in the mind. Like, how do you not think like a French person, but as a European, and see all the other countries as potential markets for you to go into? And raising money is a way to expand faster. I think that's what BlaBlaCar is doing. They're replicating this business model that works really well in France to other countries, either buying competitors or but establishing a global brand. And that's really important at some point. You have to go from that little startup in your garage to a brand that's known, recognized, and that has long-term viability. That's the hard transition.
What were you looking for when you left France to work in the US? What excited you?
I left France very early. I went to study my last year of engineering school at Cornell in New York State. Right after I finished Central here, so and I've worked there ever since. So I never really was part of the French ecosystem of startups. I wasn't even a civil engineer. I was a civil engineer when I started, so I did not know much about.
Meaning, like you were building bridges?
I was not building bridges, but cleaning up polluted sites. That's what I did first 4 years of my professional career.
Nothing to do with
nothing
tech.
to do. I mean, the web didn't really exist when I started working. It's evolved as I was working as a civil engineer, and I immediately really liked the media. I thought it was so powerful to, as a developer, to be able to write a few lines of code, push them out there, and then you had people looking at your stuff. That was magical. You as an individual having so much power to communicate something to the rest of the world. And it's still magical today, having these 2 million tickets being processed every week. That's 2 million people are actually getting the result of your coding in their hands and actually going to enrich their lives by attending a live experience. That's pretty amazing still for me.
Yeah, so this keeps you excited still.
Yeah, still.
After so many years.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't excited about what we can do, what we can build, what we can become, and how useful we've become to a lot of people.
What were you looking for when you left France to work in the US? Would you say like you've learned there a kind of paid-forward culture that you're trying to bring here?
I'm trying my best. I think we benefited a lot from that culture in the Valley. People in high places want to be helping the emerging startups, the people who have ambition, the people they can see the drive in their eyes. They want to be part of that because it energizes them. I think it makes them think about the future and helping people forge that future by giving them advice or mentoring them or even putting money on the table for some of the projects. So it's a very fundamental aspect of the Bay Area tech startup life. that people both invest their money but also their time. And I think the time part is very important. Like having one-on-one conversations with someone who's built a startup from nothing to 10,000 people, they have an experience that you cannot read anything about in the books. It just doesn't exist. You cannot go online and find that pains along the way that they had to go through. So they're the only ones who can really guide you on your journey to scaling a startup. I think it's really even more important on the scale-up phase than the startup phase.
Yeah.
Startups, I think you can live with your limitations. You might not do everything perfectly, but if your product has value, then people will use it despite all the other things. Building a company culture, hiring the best talents, becoming attractive for people who have had these experiences elsewhere. That's, I think, the tough part of scaling up. And by having these mentors or people willing to share their time with you is really a great way to, first of all, give back for people who have succeeded. I think we all have that desire to be useful and to share with others what we've learned.
Did people do it with you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I had access to anyone within our network who was a friend.
Yeah, but I
to
mean,
help us think about scaling. We had the founder of YouTube, for example,
Yeah.
who come in the office, talk to an engineer about how they scaled YouTube from nothing to billions of views. So those type of experiences are really hard to find, and if you can have access to them and they're willing to help you, that's something that's pretty unique, I think. And I hope we can replicate that here. I think I was talking to Francis from BlaBlaCar recently, and
the CTO?
the CTO, about how few people understand what he's going through every day and how scaling this type of projects is highly complex, and there's so many solutions out there. How do you pick the right one? How do you organize your teams? So this type of background is very rare, especially in France, where we don't have so many large startups yet. So being able to share at the same level with your peers and with people who have done it before, I think, is something we should push as much as we can, and I'm trying to contribute to that by helping selected startups I work with, and just understand the pains that will come and help them navigate that.
Since 2010, approximately 2011, you start really going hard on scaling and growing. What have been the biggest challenges? Has it been technical challenge? Has it been management challenge, cultural challenge?
I think there's as you hire more people, you need to think about how you, first of all, organize them, then motivate them, then retain them. And these are the things you don't think about when you're in the heat of the action at the beginning, where everybody's on board and everybody's working 15-hour days because they're so excited about the growth, proving that the product has value, and finding customers for the product. Once you go past that, I think the challenges start. You can cut a lot of corners when you start. You don't have to be an expert in everything. You can let the trademark not be applied for, and you can hire average people. Maybe you can do things that you cannot do after a while. You can not have any processes when you start. But I think as you cross like 50 people, you need that. You need to have some kind of framing around what people do every day, so they understand what the rules are, what you expect from them. You have to empower them to do their best work and to make decisions. And that, I think, as a co-founder, is hard to relinquish power. And we've had to adapt over the years with different structures, but also being comfortable with giving the decision power to someone else. And we hired these people because they're better than we are at many things. So it's a shift in mindset. It's a shift in your own expectations for your own work, what you're supposed to be responsible for, how you work with others a lot more than maybe at the beginning. And I was coding everything at the beginning, so I had the full power. And then as we added people on the team, they started suggesting that we do things differently. So how you work with them to assess if it's a good idea, to share the ownership of the idea, to empower them to actually implement the idea once it's agreed that it's a good one.
So if you must give to the people more power, you must give them the invisible rules that actually help you make choices.
I think you have to remove hurdles from their day-to-day so they don't have to think about how they're going to get paid next month. All that has to be processed and done by someone else that handles that, and you have to have policies, you have to have guidelines for how you do X and Y. Just so that people can really focus on their work, on what we hired them to do, and not to determine how they get their ticket restaurant or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
So
this is
take all the
comfort part.
Obstacles out of the way, make it clear and explicit what the rules are, what the culture is, what you think we stand for as a company. So that people don't wonder all the time, what should I be doing? Or
so, for instance, yes, of course. For instance, if we take an example, in the technical team, what is the role of this power? To give you an example, at the family, in my event team, I will say any decision under 1,000 euros. You can make absolute mistakes.
Processes already.
Yes, of course. And if it's more than 1,000, then you come and you ask. This kind of ways to help, kind of grills to help people think.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the type of things you need to put in place. The reporting structure, adding experienced managers to the team so that it's really easier in a way, but probably a mistake to promote people from the team if they're not ready. That's probably the worst mistake you can make. Promote someone to manager who, first of all, maybe doesn't want to be manager, but feels like because you've given them the opportunity, they should take it, versus hiring someone else who's understands people, understand how to motivate them, how to make them grow in their roles. That's the type of mistake you probably make at the beginning when you scale up, and that with retrospect you would not have made because you understand the value that these experienced managers can bring.
So scaling is about creating this path with visible rules to help the people be more, to help them to empower them their role, but also bringing
in... To structure things, to organize, to federate, to have cross-functional alignment as well. That's another part of the scale-up that's complicated when you have teams that start to diverge and not talk to each other.
Yeah.
Like, we cannot... Our employees don't know the 500 other employees. So.
How do they talk together?
Slack?
I mean, do they use...
we use Slack in
engineering,
Slack. Not the
entire company.
I mean, teams are free to use it. Everyone has an account. So they, depending on the size and the complexity of the organization, they decide to use it or not. I think engineering is a heavy user for sure.
Keeping the drive, keeping the excitement also is something hard when you scale.
Yeah, it's very hard. Like communicating the vision, explaining why we're doing things requires constant interactions with the entire team. Like we need them to understand why, the motivations, the expected result if we deliver on what we said we would. How does it fit with the overall vision, and how does everyone in the company contribute to that vision? That's what you have to articulate very well. Keep presenting over and over and over. I think over communicating is definitely needed and required to have alignment. And that's the hard part when you are used to everyone being in a room and being able to talk like very simply with the people in the room. Now you have 8 offices across the world and the challenge is bigger. People want to know that what they're doing today will have an impact sometime. And that's what motivates them. So if you understand that and if you provide the framework to allow them to do their best work, I think you built a very scalable company. but the process from startup to scalable company is quite arduous, especially if you don't have external people telling you how to put it in place, what's important to think about, and the key people you need to hire to make that happen.
What we say is that startups are organized around two pillars: freedom, empowering the people, but also giving them the tools to be free, and cult, like the vision, what you're talking about, the communication, sharing the information. Would you say there is a cult at Eventbrite?
There's definitely a culture, and there's principles we're strongly pushing every day, like to be an open company, transparent. We share our numbers with the entire team on a daily basis. We share our vision. There's very few secrets being kept from anyone in the company. So, and being empowering, I think that's a very important one for us. Like, removing all the roadblocks that could be on the way for you to deliver what you said you would. So a big part of the role of the managers is to coordinate between different departments, to help individuals be the most effective they can be, and that takes a lot of coordination effort that I think you don't think is valuable when you start.
And you became a manager, whereas you were, you had a management role, whereas you were at the beginning focused on tech. Has it been hard to become a manager in a way?
I think some people really love it, or they stay individual contributors for a long time. And that we have both profiles on the team. Very expert technical people who just want to be coding and don't really like to be managing. And then we have people who can do both, and those are pretty rare, I think, in general. I think I'm more on that side. I like some aspects of management, and I really like some aspects of the technical side, but I can do both somewhat well. I think a lot of founders are like that. They can multitask into different areas. But the biggest challenge for me, I think, as the company grew, was to relinquish control. I was responsible for making all the decisions. I could go on the live site and change the code anytime I wanted.
And now
there's processes made to protect the end user in the end from mistakes that could have been made if you had access directly. So I cannot go on the production servers, for example, and do anything anymore, which is a good thing. At the beginning, it's hard because you're giving away some of your power, but in retrospect, I totally understand why we need that.